Young guy meets a girl at a bus stop and ends up falling in love. The anime begins with a 16-year-old boy, Shiki Tsubasa, moving to a new city called Kitami in Hokkaido because of his father's job. He arrives by taxi and notices the falling snow. He receives a message from his father apologizing for not being able to pick him up due to work, as Tsubasa arrived earlier than expected. Tsubasa assures his father that it's okay and he can make his way home alone. He spots a sign indicating the arrival of Kitami and asks the driver to stop, thinking it's close enough to walk. As he steps out of the car, Tsubasa is impressed by the completely empty and silent place, feeling a sense of freedom compared to Tokyo where he used to live. He also notices the pure air of Hokkaido but realizes the freezing temperature, experiencing a winter harsher than he's accustomed to. Now his only option is to walk through the snow to reach his home. Tsubasa regrets his father's decision to move during winter, and to make matters worse, his phone is running out of battery. Suddenly, Tsubasa notices a girl nearby wearing a skirt despite the cold. He is surprised at the difference in their clothing, as he is freezing despite being bundled up. The girl notices Tsubasa looking at her, and he takes the opportunity to ask for directions to his home. Approaching her with his phone, he realizes she has a red nose from the cold. After pointing out the direction, the girl mentions it's a 3-hour walk, wondering why he's on foot in such weather. Tsubasa is surprised that a neighboring district is so far away within the same city. She explains that Kitami is vast, having the largest territory of all cities in the province. Tsubasa regrets getting out of the car without assessing the situation, but thinks he can call another taxi. The girl explains that taxis don't come to their location, and it would take at least 30 minutes to get one by phone. Feeling stranded, Tsubasa thinks he's in trouble, but the girl suggests waiting for a bus with her, which would take him to his destination in 5 minutes. The girl realizes Tsubasa is not from there, and he explains he just moved from Tokyo, surprising her that someone would leave a city like Tokyo for a place like Kitami, assuming he finds the people there tacky. Tsubasa notices the girl's accent and explains he moved for family reasons, finding Kitami a peaceful place. He reflects on being bullied in Tokyo for not being popular, but feels relieved that no one in the new city knows him as Brega, tacky. Observing Tsubasa, the girl comments that he seems like a nice guy. Later, she gets excited to discover they are the same age and will attend the same school, Hokkaido High School. She becomes overly familiar, leaving Tsubasa embarrassed. He thinks he has never met a girl like her in Tokyo and wonders if all girls in Hokkaido are like her. At that moment, the girl starts calling him, but he is distracted and doesn't hear. To get his attention, she playfully puts some snow inside his coat, finding his reaction to the cold amusing. Tsubasa notices her laughing, impressed by her beauty, and accidentally comments on it aloud, making the girl blush. The bus arrives, and before she boards, Tsubasa asks for her name. She replies that she is Fuyuki Minami and says goodbye. Tsubasa is thrilled to have moved to that city, but realizes he should have boarded the bus with her. Now he has to wait for the next bus in the cold. At the same time, he freaks out for losing his transportation. Minami thinks it would be cool if both of them were in the same class. The next day, Tsubasa goes to his new school, where he introduces himself to his class, explaining that he moved from Tokyo the day before. Then the teacher shows him where he should sit, and the boy goes to his desk while searching for Minami. As he doesn't see her anywhere, he thinks they must have gone to different classes, feeling a bit sad about it. However, Tsubasa tries to cheer himself up by thinking that he has always liked serious girls with dark hair, and that he was just impressed because he had never met a girl like Minami before. But at that moment, she enters the room and gets super excited to see Tsubasa ignoring the teacher calling her attention for being late. Not only were they in the same class, but they also sat next to each other, making Tsubasa wonder if something as cliché as that coincidence happened in real life. Then Minami finally learns Tsubasa's name and says he has a beautiful name. She then calls him by his first name, making the guy nervous with all that formality, as only his family and friends call him that. And so the class goes on, but Tsubasa shivers from the cold as if that room were a freezer. He wonders how everyone is attending class in that freezing environment, but realizes that his classmates are wearing jackets and blankets. Tsubasa shivers from the cold and thinks that he might catch a cold that way when Minami nudges him and offers her blanket, explaining that she usually uses two because she catches a cold very easily, but that at that moment she was warm with just one. Tsubasa accepts the borrowed clothes and puts it on his lap, warming up instantly because the blanket was already warm from Minami's body. This makes Tsubasa realize that he also had the girl's scent, bringing a sensation as if she herself were hugging him, but he fights against that thought and tries to control himself. After the class ends, Tsubasa returns the blanket to Minami and thanks her for lending it to him, but out of nowhere, the girl smells the clothes. He thinks it's because it was stinking and says he can wash it for her, but Minami explains that she actually smelled the blanket because it had their combined scent. Then Minami says that there is a way for Tsubasa to thank her for her help, as she had no one to accompany her after school. And Suvi takes Minami to the train station, once again getting nervous with their proximity. On the way, out of the blue, the girl asks if Tsubasa has a girlfriend. The guy is surprised and denies it in a way that amuses Minami. Then she asks where he usually goes for dates in Tokyo. Tsubasa mentions 2 places despite never having had a date, and the girl is surprised that he didn't include Shibuya, a place where many people go to buy clothes. However, he says it's better places where you can eat and stroll, but he says this without mentioning the fact that he simply has never done that and read it on the internet. Minami comments that Tokyo has many more options for places to hang out than Kitami, which leads Tsubasa to ask where she usually goes. But the girl explains that during winter, it's too cold to leave the house, so they just visit each other's homes. At that moment, the two arrive at the train station, and Minami thanks Tsubasa for accompanying her there. Then he says goodbye to her, but before leaving, she asks if he would like to come to her house the next day since they didn't have class, as she wanted to know more about Tokyo. Tsubasa gets nervous with that invitation, but agrees to go to her house, leaving Minami excited. And so the next day, Tsubasa goes to a girl's house for the first time in his life, and it's only his 3rd day in that city, making him even more nervous about the whole situation. He rings the doorbell, thinking that if his family knew he was going to a girl's house, he would be in trouble. Then Minami enters the intercom and opens the door for Tsubasa, making him wonder about the security of the place. As soon as he walks in, Tsubasa begins to take off his shoes. She welcomes him and says he's lucky that his parents aren't home. This makes the guy nervous and confused about what she meant. Later, Minami shows Tsubasa around her room, and he notices how warm the place is. She explains that the room has a large heater, along with underfloor heating, unlike his own room, which is always cold with just a small heater. With this, Tsubasa understands that she mentioned he's lucky his parents aren't home. Otherwise, they would have to stay in his chilly room. Tsubasa thinks that nothing strange will happen, and the girl decides to take advantage of the guy's distraction to accidentally bump her foot into him and give him a scare. Then Minami asks what they could do, and because of that, she remembers to offer him a drink. She goes to the kitchen and asks what Tsubasa would like to have. As he replies that anything is fine, she brings a drink called katsujin, explaining that she has liked it since childhood. He tries it and realizes it's similar to yogurt. Meanwhile, Minami gets some for herself too, but ends up spilling it on her clothes. So she goes to change but comes back wearing an outfit that makes Tsubasa more nervous than he already was. To distract himself, he quickly shows that he brought a movie for them to watch together. And so they start watching the movie since neither of them had seen it before. However, in the middle of it, Minami ends up falling asleep. Tsubasa wonders why she's acting so carelessly, sleeping like that near a guy, but he thinks it must be because she doesn't see him that way. Sometime later, Minami wakes up and asks about the movie. Tsubasa explains that it had already ended and he didn't want to wake her, but he leaves the Blu-ray for her to watch. Then Minami realizes she's covered with his jacket, and Tsubasa explains that despite the room being warm, he was afraid she might get cold, so he thought it was better to cover her with something. Minami returns the jacket still half asleep, and Tsubasa says goodbye, explaining that it's getting late and he has to go back home. Only after Tsubasa leaves does the girl wake up. She runs after him and apologizes, feeling bad for falling asleep and leaving him alone. Tsubasa only cares that she went out in that outfit and covers Minami with his scarf to prevent her from catching a cold, making the girl blush. Minami thanks him and he offers his coat as well, but she explains that she always dresses that way when going out quickly. Tsubasa is relieved to see that she's fine, but unlike the girl, he starts sneezing from the cold. Then Minami explains that she's hungry and starts pulling him towards a place called Sycamore, saying that the meal is on her as a way to apologize for sleeping during the movie. A few days later, Minami makes a mini snowman and takes a picture of it to post on social media. Later, she goes to her school and finds Tsubasa distracted with a poster. The girl sneaks up and asks him quietly what he's doing. Tsubasa startles, and Minami sees that he was looking at the poster for the Kitami Winter Festival, which would take place the following weekend. So she decides to go with him to the event, leaving the guy a bit nervous about the idea of having a date with the girl. And so on Saturday, Minami has lunch with her mother, May, and her younger sister, Momoko, who misses her father during a meal as he should have already come home from work. Then May suggests that they take advantage of his day off on Sunday for a family outing. Momoko is excited about the idea and mentions wanting to go ice skating, but Minami explains that she already made plans to go to the winter festival with a school friend, so she can't join them. May remembers that Minami used to attend the event in elementary school. The next day, on the day of the festival, she arranges to meet Tsubasa in front of Kitami Station. He is still nervous about the idea of a two-person outing, but tries to calm down and focus on enjoying his first event in Hokkaido, considering that Minami might have offered to go with him to be friendly, given that he just moved and didn't have any friends. And so Tsubasa arrives at Kitami Station and waits for Minami calmly. But as soon as the girl appears all dressed up, the guy freaks out again, almost having a heart attack. She notes that it's their first time going out on a day off and asks if Tsubasa thinks she looks pretty. He obviously agrees, but Minami says that since she asked, it seems like the compliment was just out of obligation. He quickly changes the subject, recalling that she mentioned not attending the winter festival since elementary school. She agrees, saying that she indeed hasn't been to the event in a long time. Then Tsubasa mentions being excited to see the snow statues and ice sculptures, things only found in Hokkaido. He shares that he also researched the food stalls, showing genuine enthusiasm for the outing. Minami quietly advises Tsubasa not to set too many expectations, but since he doesn't hear her, she pretends she didn't say anything. And so they head to the Kitami Winter Festival. Arriving there, Minami thinks Tsubasa won't find the event that exciting, but he is thrilled with everything he sees. They go to see the snow statues, and the girl comments that they used to be even bigger. Tsubasa says it's probably her who grew. Then he decides to take a photo. Minami approves the idea and takes a selfie of the two, but the guy ends up looking strange because he is distracted by the girl's approach. After the photo, she smells food and decides to go to the stalls so they can grab something to eat. There, Tsubasa buys a sugar-coated corn dog while Minami enjoys her yakitori. When he returns, she asks to take a bite of his corn dog. He hands over the snack for her to bite, but then gets nervous about eating where Minami bit, and she finds it amusing how easy he is to read. After eating, they make the most of the festival, and after enjoying themselves, they take another break to have a hot drink being distributed. Minami takes the opportunity to ask if Tsubasa is enjoying the outing. He says yes, explaining that he finds all the snow and ice simply incredible. After all, until now he had only lived in Tokyo, and despite Hokkaido still being part of Japan, everything here is quite different. Then he thanks Minami for going to the event with him, making the girl blush. She confesses that she was a bit worried since the last time she attended the winter festival. She was still a child. Despite having a lot of fun back then, she didn't know if the outing would still be enjoyable, so she was a bit concerned about him being disappointed, realizing now that all her worry was unnecessary. The girl comments that when she's with Tsubasa, she likes Hokkaido even more because he reminds her of how great that city is. Although she never realized it, she loves her hometown and is happy to have gone to the festival with him. Suddenly, Minami stumbles and falls to the ground. Tsubasa rushes to help, but they end up very close, both feeling awkward about the situation and quickly move away without being able to look at each other. After the festival, they leave together, and Tsubasa suggests that if she wants, they could go out together again somewhere else. Minami takes the opportunity to tease him, asking if he wanted to go out with her so much, and mentions that she wishes to go to the Sapporo Snow Festival someday. The next day, during lunchtime at school, Tsubasa prepares to eat his packed lunch when Minami appears. She sits with him and says she brought instant noodles for him to try, commenting that the food always seems tastier at school. Tsubasa is surprised to see that Minami bought yakisoba just for him to try. She explains that he was so excited about the food at the festival stalls that she wanted to introduce more of Hokkaido's cuisine to him. Then Minami pours boiling water from her bottle to prepare the noodles, and after waiting 3 minutes, the meal is ready. She explains that the yakeben comes with Chinese soup broth so it can be made using the water that would be discarded. Tsubasa is impressed by the appearance and aroma of instant noodles. The girl then takes a bit of yakisoba and puts it in the guy's mouth. After tasting it, he starts talking about how good the food is, and Minami mentions that she paid off her debt because Tsubasa gave her a bite of his sugar-coated corn dog at the festival. The guy immediately blushes and she teases his reaction, but he covers it up by saying he turned red because the noodles were hot. Next, Minami asks to see Tsubasa's lunchbox. He shows it to her, explaining that it's just a regular lunch, but the girl is impressed with the dish, even asking to take a picture. She tries a piece of meat and is enchanted by the taste. Tsubasa explains it's pork prepared by his grandmother, prompting Minami to joke that she wants to marry his grandmother. After lunch, while the girl touches up her nail polish, he thanks her for the yakisoba, explaining that it was the first time in his life he had instant noodles. This makes Minami remember that Tsubasa also mentioned that the other experiences they had together were new. He agrees, recalling it was the first time he went to a girl's house, as well as never having shopped at a convenience store, and never having been to a festival with a friend before. These things make Minami start to consider Tsubasa a rich guy. She mentions feeling a different aura from him, like someone living in Tokyo. Tsubasa explains she has the wrong idea about Tokyo and says he doesn't think his family's rich. Then Minami asks if she could go to his house after class. Since the girl literally invites herself, Tsubasa has no choice but to agree. And so they go to his house together, while he wonders what he's going to do since his grandmother will be there. Suddenly, Tsubasa sees Minami excitedly entering a snow house probably built by some child in the middle of the street. She pulls him inside with the intention of giving him another new experience in the city, but Tsubasa feels uncomfortable with the situation, especially with their closeness. So he quickly exits the ice house, but to his misfortune, his grandmother appears right at that moment. Tsubasa thinks about coming up with an excuse for being inside an ice house, but Minami appears first, making the lady think her grandson was doing something inappropriate with the girl. Next, Tsubasa introduces his grandmother, Kid Hanamiya. Minami is delighted to meet her and also introduces herself, unaware of how awkward they were in that situation. The girl mentions tasting the lunchbox Kid made for Tsubasa and how divine it was, making him worry about what his grandmother will think. Minami continues, saying she envies him for being able to eat such delicious home-cooked meals every day. Kid thanks the girl for the compliment and asks about her relationship with her grandson. Minami begins to answer that they are friends, but Tsubasa says outright that they are just classmates, leaving the girl confused. At this moment, it starts snowing, and Kid bids farewell to Minami, explaining that she and Tsubasa need to go home for a very important appointment. The guy apologizes and also says goodbye to her, thinking that he should have foreseen that it would never work out because his grandmother hates when people are too open in relationships, which is exactly how the girl acts, and because of that, she probably wouldn't talk to him again. However, soon after, Minami goes after them, asking them to wait. She explains that it's not a good idea for Kid to walk in the snow with an umbrella, as it might be slippery, and she needs to have her hands free to protect herself in case she slips. She mentions that her grandmother broke a bone that way some time ago, so she knows the importance of being careful. Kid follows the advice and closes her umbrella. Then Minami asks which way they are going to get home, and Tsubasa points in a direction, which the girl recalls has a crosswalk that is probably covered in ice and quite slippery in that weather. Because of that, she suggests a safer and quicker route for the two of them to take and decides to guide them there. Then she offers to hold Kid's bag, telling the lady that she should take care of the hands that prepare such delicious food. At that moment, Tsubasa says he will carry the bag and takes the opportunity to ask if Minami is angry with him. But she replies that she has no reason to be angry with someone who's just a classmate. Tsubasa apologizes for speaking that way about her and explains that he had difficulties telling his grandmother, but he considers her a very important friend. And so the three go to Tsubasa's house, guided by Minami, while the grandmother observes the two during the journey. Upon arriving, she is impressed with the residence and begins to say goodbye since they had an appointment. However, Kid offers the girl to come inside for a hot tea, explaining that thanks to her help, they arrived earlier and have some free time. Inside the house, Kid prepares the tea, thinking that she's getting soft, but if her grandson chose that girl, it must mean she's a good person. However, when Kid goes to the two to deliver the tea, she sees Minami taking several photos of the house, mentioning how excited she is to be in the house of a rich family. This makes the lady think that maybe she should keep an eye on the girl, but then she notices how happy her grandson was. This makes her remember how he used to smile that way when he was just a little boy who wanted to study and learn many things, so that when he grew up, he could take care of everyone in his family. Since that was a long time ago, Kid thinks she could trust that smile. A few days later, Tsubasa and Minami take the school bus to spend a whole day of class skiing, a common activity in Hokkaido. While she was super excited, as she loved skiing and had been doing it since childhood, Tsubasa was a bit apprehensive, having never skied in his life. The girl teases the guy for being afraid of skiing and explains that practically everyone there is used to it. Tsubasa then explains that unlike Hokkaido, it rarely snows in Tokyo, and when it doesn't accumulate enough snow for skiing. Suddenly, he notices that Minami is distracted, looking at a girl named Akino Sayuri sitting next to him. She asks if the girl is excited about skiing, but Sayuri completely ignores her, leaving Minami a bit sad. Tsubasa observes that Minami usually gets along with everyone and finds it strange how the girl treated her. He deduces that something has happened between them and asks Minami if she's okay. The girl explains that she's desperate to be friends with Sayuri because she's sure they would be good friends. Minami recounts that they've never argued or anything, and she really likes Sayuri, despite not understanding why the girl always ignores her. Tsubasa comments that Minami has a lot of determination to keep trying to be friends with Sayuri, and she explains that she finds everything about the girl divine. Minami starts talking about the girl's style and appearance, making Tsubasa notice Sayuri, who also notices he feels the same way. Later, their class finally arrives at the ski resort, where they are divided into groups A to C, based on their skiing abilities, with each teacher responsible for a group. Since everyone knew how to ski, except for Tsubasa and Sayuri, the teacher puts them together to practice on a flat surface, while the rest of Class C goes up the cable car and down the ski slope. However, the teacher warns that as he will be in charge of Class C, he won't be able to keep an eye on them, so they should be careful and not take unnecessary risks. Tsubasa thinks this is his chance to talk to Sayuri and ease things between her and Minami. However, as soon as he starts speaking, the girl puts on headphones, signaling that she doesn't want to be disturbed, and Tsubasa decides to respect her wishes. Then she starts skiing, and he decides to do the same, noting that it's easier to walk when shifting weight from one leg to the other. But after a short time, Sayuri falls. Tsubasa goes to help her up, but she stands up on her own, questioning why she has to learn to ski. At that moment, Minami arrives, performing various snow maneuvers, excited about skiing. This impresses Tsubasa, but the teacher scolds her for risky jumps. Sayuri asks Tsubasa if they are dating, as they were talking on the bus and during class. The guy gets nervous and explains that they are just friends. Sayuri comments that Minami is the perfect popular girl, being flashy, party-loving, and very outgoing, having everything she doesn't have. After opening up a bit to him, Sayuri goes back to skiing, while Minami helps others at the ski resort gather the courage to descend the mountain, instructing them on the correct way to do it. After a while, the teacher in charge of Class C finally shows up to check on Tsubasa and Sayuri. He apologizes for being so busy with the other students and explains that most of them have already gone for lunch, feeling embarrassed for forgetting to inform the two. So they take a lunch break, but as everyone has finished lunch, Tsubasa decides not to eat on the bus to avoid being alone with Sayuri. Therefore, he goes to have lunch at tables inside the ski resort. However, upon arrival, he realizes he forgot his chopsticks. This makes him go back to the bus to get the chopsticks from his backpack. However, upon entering, Tsubasa finds Sayuri with her shirt lifted. He quickly turns to the other side, and both are embarrassed and silent for a while, not knowing what to say. Tsubasa deduces that the girl thought it was safe to change inside the bus since it was empty, and he thinks the best thing to do in that situation is to explain himself. So Tsubasa apologizes for seeing her changing and explains that he won't tell anyone what he saw and just came back to get his chopsticks he forgot in the backpack. He asks if he can just grab them and leave the bus, but as Sayuri remains silent, he thinks it's better to leave and come back later. However, before leaving, she holds him by the shirt, and despite still being red from the incident, she says she needs to explain. As a result, the two have lunch on the bus, but as they start eating in silence, Tsubasa becomes afraid of the girl. Suddenly, after taking a sip of her drink, Sayuri starts explaining. She mentions that her body sweats a lot, which makes her very embarrassed. Consequently, she started avoiding participating in sports, but after a while of doing that, she fell behind in all athletic activities. Sayuri continues explaining that it made her lose confidence in herself, and before she knew it, she was avoiding everyone. That's why sometimes she tries to make an effort, like that day, but being caught trying to wipe her sweat made her even more nervous. After hearing the girl, Tsubasa apologizes again for what happened, but Sayuri says it's her fault for being so careless. Then the guy is puzzled about why she had the courage to open up and tell something so personal to someone she just met, and Sayuri explains that it was easier to talk to him precisely because they know nothing about each other, and he's extremely reliable, making it unlikely for him to spread what he saw to others. She comments that besides that, they were in a way in the same situation because she didn't have any friends, and he had just been transferred there and still didn't know anyone properly. Tsubasa says it's not easy having just moved, but helping her makes him happy. At that moment, they both hear a noise coming from her backpack. Tsubasa says she can check what happened, thinking it might be a notification from her phone. Sayuri hesitates for a moment, but concludes that there's no reason to keep hiding. So she reveals that the noise was the notification of an update for her fighting game. Tsubasa mentions that he doesn't usually play, so he's not familiar with that game, surprising her as it features many famous characters. She then suggests she try playing. However, Tsubasa has no idea what to do, so Sayuri explains how to play, finding it amusing how completely lost he is. She gets excited talking about the game, making him uncomfortable with her closeness. Sayuri notices and apologizes for getting too excited. She explains that she wants to get along with people, so she worries about maintaining a good appearance. However, her demeanor often scares others, leading her to retreat and hide behind games, the only thing she feels she can do well. Tsubasa remarks on her incredible effort, expressing that both her personality and appearance are unique, and he's happy to have met her. This leaves Sayuri completely embarrassed, and Tsubasa asks her to teach them more about games so they can play together. Sayuri agrees and then explains that he'll be able to play when he tries. So Sayuri watches Tsubasa play and he manages to win a fight, feeling happy about leveling up. However, she explains that it was just the game's weakest CPU, and it wasn't as significant an achievement as he thought. At that moment, Tsubasa realizes that their lunch break is over and they have to return to class. They go back to skiing, but while Sayuri just wants to relax and wait for time to pass, Tsubasa wants to try skiing for real because to him, just like in the game, trying is enough to succeed. Thus, they head to the cable car to go up the mountain and ski down. Since Class A was free to ski for the rest of the class, Minami, who was considering where to ski, sees the two together on the cable car. They are a bit worried that something might go wrong, and Sayuri asks Tsubasa why he decided to ski since the teacher asked them to take it easy. He explains that he has challenged himself to try various new things since moving to Hokkaido and reassures her that they are heading to the easiest ski slope, and he asks the teacher for tips before lunch. Sayuri finds him incredible for trying new things, and Tsubasa reveals that Minami inspired him to do so. She was the first friend he made since moving and introduced him to many new places and various foods. The way he enthusiastically talks about Minami makes Sayuri comment that it's obvious he likes her. Tsubasa gets nervous and insists they're just friends, but Sayuri responds that his effort to deny it only confirms her suspicion. Sayuri mentions that it must mean Minami is a good person, but as everyone idolizes her, she always wonders why a popular girl like her would want to talk to someone so unpopular. Because of this, she usually ignores Minami as she doesn't know the right way to respond. Tsubasa tries to explain that Minami just wants to be friends, but before he can say anything, they reach the beginner slope. Then they leave the cable car, and before descending the mountain, Tsubasa says that if he can ski to the end without falling once, she has to give an answer to Minami. Sayuri explains she's not trying to ignore Minami, but he insists, explaining that Minami just wants to be her friend. Sayuri finds Tsubasa's effort amusing, but he says he's not doing it just for Minami, he also wants to be her friend. So she agrees to his request with a condition. Next, they ski down the mountain together, and Tsubasa recalls everything the teacher taught him about skiing. They are happy to find they can ski without any problems, and Tsubasa prepares to slow down to stop safely. He's thrilled to have successfully skied, but realizes he forgot to teach Sayuri how to stop. Tsubasa tries to shout for her to bring the ski tips together, but since Sayuri doesn't hear, he prepares to catch her. Fortunately, Minami appears and explains to Sayuri how to fall without getting hurt. She demonstrates, and both of them fall safely into the snow. Tsubasa is relieved to see them okay, but then the teacher scolds them for skiing without permission. Since it was Tsubasa's idea to descend the mountain, he takes the responsibility alone, acknowledging his mistake and risking both of their safety. Once he goes to talk to the teacher, Sayuri thanks Minami for the help and apologizes for treating her so coldly earlier, making Minami very happy. And so when the class ends, they return by bus, with Minami thinking it was a wonderful day because she skied and finally became friends with Sayuri. However, she's a bit disappointed because she thought the three of them would return chatting, but instead, they ended up sleeping during the journey. Next week, we'll have more of this anime as soon as the new episode is released, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the like button below to support this video. See you guys.